Good day, everyone, and welcome to another interesting edition of the program Political Clinic. My name is Pius Kadon, your host on, on your right line about historically. Political Clinic is one program that dissects political happenings in Nigeria, and then we seek to find solution on how to, go about some of these happenings, especially if they pose a serious challenge to, citizens. And on today's edition of the show, I have with me, joining via Zoom, a public affairs analyst talking about Mr. Emmanuel Okwalisa. I hope I got that name right. Mr.
Yeah,
Emmanuel,
yeah,
are you
yeah.
there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, yes, it's fine.
All right. So I think you're not new to some of the happenings, especially in Rivers State, the political chaos in Rivers State and then the subsequent proclamation or even the announcement of an emergency rule in that state last Tuesday. What do you have to say about that as a way of, starting the show? Can just put us through on what you think about the recent proclamation by President Muhammadu Buhari, by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for that, pardon me.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
We all know that for more than a year now, going to 2 years, Rivers State has been in a kind of political hiatus, like a contestation between a godson and his godfather. And then again, the State House crisis about the legislatures who defected, and then the issue they had with the governor. So a lot of things have been happening in Rivers State in the past 2 years, which many believe has necessitated or has led up to the declaration of a state of emergency by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Even though the declaration has raised quite a storm in the polity, with some supporting it and some being against it. Yes, some claiming that it's a threat to democracy or that it is not a proper representation of what democracy should be, especially in a federal system of government, which Nigeria practices.
Yeah, I get you there. But then, is it just like you said, the proclamation by Mr. President has, been greeted by lots of reactions from, across the divides and from all quarters, trust me. And then a lot of people argue that maybe this is just a way of trying to use a sledgehammer on maybe an insect or something. It feels like Mr. President actually took a very stiffer, measure in that respect. Maybe something different from proclaiming a state of emergency would have, sufficed. Don't you think?
Yes, to some extent, I think so. Because proclaiming a state of emergency, okay, let us even look at the previous states of emergency that have been proclaimed, like during the time of President Jonathan. He proclaimed the state of emergency in, I think, three northeastern states. But in those their cases, it was a state of security issue, very serious security issue. When it seems like the Boko Haram insurgency and other minute security challenges were beginning to overpower the state apparatus. It was beginning to like overpower the state government. And that is when the federal government now stepped in. And so just like you said, Tinubu now declaring a state of emergency for what I might term a mere political misunderstanding between political players in Rivers State. Yes, it seems as if he's using a sledgehammer to just kill a mosquito. It seems that there should have been other means of settling this. You know, there should have been other means of settling it. Maybe through the judiciary actually tried to step in through proclamations and court judgments. But then again, they were not seen to be excellent in their delivery, in their judgment delivery, because there were contradictions here and there. But then again, being the president, it behoves on him to use his federal power and his position, his office as the first citizen of Nigeria to call every warring party to order. which they claimed he tried to do or he actually did. But the question is how well or what was the political will behind it? Was it just something he did for the camera? Did he really call them to order? Did he really like draw their ears and put certain limitations or warnings and that if you do this or if you don't do this, this is going to be the situation? Because people are believing and thinking that the president also has some interest in River State. People think that he's not being very sincere in handling the River State issue.
If you're talking about some people thinking that the president, yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, if looking at areas where someone would be tempted to think that maybe the president has interest in River State, some people are of the opinion that this recent decision by the president actually didn't really favor the two embattled political gladiators in the state, talking about former governor of the state and present FCT Minister Wike, and of course the embattled Fubara. Some people believe that this decision did not really favor these two political gladiators. Rather, it is favoring the president. And then, this is Nigeria. Some people would even tell you that it is a way of trying to capture the state against 2027, trying to gain entrance or even trying to gain some sort of powers in the state against 2027. Because if you look at the sole administrator that has been appointed, you would see that someone that we would say, based on how we see it from the surface, that does not belong to the camp of Wike or even to the camp of Fubara. So it is more like the president trying to, gaining advantage, so to speak, of the whole battle and then trying to capture the state. Do you share in that thought?
Yes, I've had such opinions from different corners that the president might have some stake in Rivers, especially considering that Rivers State is the second most financially viable state in Nigeria after Lagos. They have the highest IGR, internally generated revenue for Nigerian government after Lagos. Yeah, but then again, we cannot completely rule out the fact that saying that the declaration didn't favor Fubara and Wike. Clearly, it didn't favor Fubara, but what of Wike? Wike has nothing to lose. Wike is still the minister of FCT. He's still the minister of
He has
FCT.
nothing
And
to lose
even
because the lawmakers that are loyal to him are also out of the way. They've also been suspended.
He has nothing to lose at the moment because it's more of like if you can't have it, he's what people think he was trying to do was to establish himself as the godfather. So for him now, if his godson is not going to be loyal to him, who is Fubara, is rebelling, if he's not going to be loyal to him, then he, Wike, might even be said to have succeeded in bringing the godson down, at least for this initial 6 months. He has achieved it by saying, okay, since you're not going to give me my cake, you are also not going to have the cake. And let me also remind you that President Tinubu cannot have Rivers State in 2027, quote me, without either Fubara or Wike. He cannot.
Why do you think so? Why do you think so, Mr. Emmanuel? Why do you think so?
Because because
the PDP is in disarray. The PDP is in disarray, especially in Rivers State. And if you look at the whole thing, it's as if the APC is the only party trying to put their acts together in the state.
Yeah, but even at that, the APC, where, like, for example, who does the APC have in Rivers State? It is the same defected 27 House members who defected from PDP to APC. And mind you, these people are all loyal to a fault to Wike. Mind you, these 27 state legislators are loyal to Wike. So to some extent, Wike is still calling the shots. And we can also not disregard the maybe small stance that Fubara has. So with whatever Tinubu is going to do in Rivers State come 2027, he needs Wike, he needs Fubara, either of them. Though they may say he needs Wike more because Wike is more of a political godfather. And even the Ibas, who is the current sole administrator of Rivers State, he's been touted to be a Wike's person too. There are a lot of pictures of where he and Wike have been seen in the past dining or whining or in official engagements, exchanging pleasantries. And so the
Some
people
people
are saying
will
that,
tell you these are just mere pictures.
but it's beyond coincidence when you see it more than 1, 2, 3. It just maybe it's mere
Yeah,
picture, but
actually.
yes, it's beyond mere coincidence because for political figures to meet over time, he's not. Ibas was a military person, a security chief at that period, and for him to have such humongous amount of meeting with Wike, it also believed that something may be in the offing, but it's not. It's just a conspiracy theory. And
Yeah.
let me say this. If after 6 months of this state of emergency, that Fubara is not sitting on the seat as the governor of Rivers State, Tinubu may have shot himself in the foot. In the sense that people are
Okay.
already saying, okay, he doesn't want, he's fighting against the Ijaw people. This is a fight against Ijaw people. And even though we can say that Ijaws are minority, but they are not very, very minority in that sense. In the South, for example, they are a popular majority group. In fact, if you check online, it started that they are the fourth most populous majority group after Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba. And even though that may not be very credible, but at least they have millions of Ijaw people who are eligible voters who can cast their vote in 2027. So,
yes, spread across the South, not just Rivers State.
that is the point I'm making. That's the point I'm driving to. Because if you say just Rivers State, it's just maybe 200,000, 500,000. But it's spread across the whole South region. They are in Bayelsa. A lot of them are in Bayelsa. They are in Delta. They are in Edo. They are even in Ondo State. And so now, for example, let us just even look at a good opposition party can seize that opportunity during campaigns and whip up sentiments, whip up emotions for the Ijaw people and say, look, this President Bola Ahmed Tinubu doesn't like us. He has cheated us of our brother being a governor. He has done this, he has done that. A good opposition party that knows how to whip up sentiment is going to win over the Ijaw to himself. And thereby, Tinubu has lost potential millions of votes in this South states. So Tinubu also must be careful, even if he has an interest in Rivers, on how he handles the situation.
Yeah, but a lot of people would say, okay, because he so much believes in Wike, and then the almighty Wike, who actually would say gave him Rivers State during the last presidential election, could actually perform magic in 2027.
Yes, that's a
You don't
possibility, but
believe
more
that?
of like a. Yes,
Are you
we
there?
cannot rule that out. That Wike remains a force, and that's why I was telling you that President Tinubu cannot have Rivers State without Wike or a sitting governor that the people are loyal to. He cannot have Rivers State on his own. Even with the current sole administrator, even if that sole administrator stays there till 2027, the people are going to revolt against him through the ballot paper if Tinubu does not give the people what they want. After all, that is part of what democracy is, which was what we are discussing about. But democracy is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So Tinubu must listen to what the people want. Whether he's going to work through Wike, who is the godfather, they must be strategic about it if they are going to make any headways in 2027 in Rivers State.
I'll take you back to the constitutionality of the whole Rivers saga. Former President Jonathan condemned the act of proclaiming an emergency rule in Rivers State. And of course, the NBA, talking about Nigerian Bar Association, also issued a statement saying the president should reconsider his decision and make sure that he restore the mandate of Fubara. And, if you look at some of the constitutional provision that, a lot of people will tell you mandated the provision or even the permission of such emergency rule, you'll be looking at section 305 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. But then, in as much as that part of that section of the Constitution actually, it's in some way gave the president that power to proclaim a state of emergency. There are reservations, although I'm not a lawyer, but then there are reservations where, the part of the Constitution also says that except, the Federation is at war, and then or the Federation is at imminent danger involvement in a state of war. Now, quoting that part of the Constitution. And then another part says, or except if there is actual breakdown of public order or public safety in the Federation or any part thereof to such extent as to require extraordinary measure to restore peace and security. Now, this part actually, struck me when I read it, because before the proclamation of that state of emergency in Rivers State, we had situation of, bomb attack, so to speak, an explosion in one of the, oil installation in Rivers State. Could that have mandated President Tinubu to announce an emergency rule in Rivers State? Is that justification enough?
It's not a big justification because um, that explosion was something the state government also had the power to handle using this security apparatus which every state in Nigeria has. It also brings us back to the issue of state security, which has been muted for quite a number of time now, that the Nigerian federalism has not allowed state structures or governors to be able to properly control security in their state. But that is by the way. So Tinubu now using that excuse, just like as I mentioned to you, quoting the previous state of emergencies, that they were in terms of serious security concerns. And yes, as you said, using the constitution, security concerns are very viable reasons why a state of emergency should be declared in any state. Yeah. And this case of pipeline vandalization. What if it was even a calculated attempt by opponents or enemies of Fubara, knowing that they preempted that, okay, that if we strike the pipeline, the oil installations, this is going to happen, and it actually happened as they thought. That is just one postulation. It may not be correct. But
That's
again,
a conspiracy theory,
why
yeah.
does yes, it's a conspiracy actually. Then secondly, why was there, or why did there seem to be a breakdown of law and order in Rivers State, even though it had not yet blown into a full-blown crisis or riot or looting of properties or stuff like that? It is simply because the three main arms of government that should govern any society, whether in democracy, parliamentary, presidential forms, or whatever, these arms of government were seen not to be functioning optimally at their expected capabilities. And that is the executive, which Fubara represented, the legislature, which the defecting House of Members proposed to have represented, and then the judiciary, which must remain neutral at all times. In this case, we have a situation where the judiciary made a lot of court pronouncements regarding the Rivers State, from calling off the local government election that was carried out, nullifying them, saying, okay, that budget should be represented, this and that. We saw that there was a complete breakdown of law and order, but not with the people. In this case, it was with the arms of government. And even if we are to support, okay, let's say, for example, when most of those court judgments were pronounced, Fubara, the governor, the erstwhile governor of the state, had to obey court order. There's a time the court told him, okay, that you will have to represent your budget. And Fubara did that. He went back to the defecting 27 House of Assembly members, but they locked him out. And again, the court also told him that he's going to have to nullify the elections that were conducted, local government elections. He also heeded. You said?
In local government elections, you mean?
Yes. And he also did that. He also accepted the court decisions on that and nullified and said, okay, that there's going to be a new election in the state. So then, any other well-meaning Nigeria or analyst here will ask, what else did they want from Governor Siminalayi Fubara? What else were they looking for? What necessitated this state of emergency that the president declared? That it is not seeming very sincere. It's not seeming very sincere. And if you remember in the text, in the full speech of Mr. President, he said that the governor destroyed the House of Assembly complex and refused to build it. But later, the government now released pictures that it was actually rebuilding and even had gone to advanced stages of rebuilding the complex. So these are the things that have been posing questions on the authoritative of the federal government in this matter.
So in a way, you are saying the president decision shouldn't have been taken in the first place, the decision to declare state of emergency.
Yes, yes, something like that. I think it was too hurried. It was too hurried. The government, the federal government decided not, it didn't show itself to have the political will to do what it was supposed to do in the first place. You understand? Okay, imagine, I heard that the federal allocations for the states, for River State, were not being released for some while, even though the court had told the federal government to release it. But now the current sole administrator of the state has said that he has received federal allocation. So what does it mean that the federal government intentionally was waiting to chase
Withheld.
away the governor, withholding the federal allocation? They now put in their own man and now begin to give him federal allocation. These are the things that beg for questions in these situations.
We look at how things actually pan out at the end of the day. But there are a lot of people who are also sharing such concerns of what seemed to have happened after Fubara actually left the scene and what didn't happen when he was there. And some of these persons also feel that some of the measures being taken to declare the state of emergency in River State should have also, replicated in, some of the deterrent or even some measures that would deter this kind of prolonged or even protracted political chaos or even battle between political gladiators. And they would say, or they would tell you that at least the FCT minister should have had some sort of, punitive, measure from the president. Do you believe that, okay, meddling with a state governor, even after leaving that particular state, should have called for some sort of punitive, maybe for lack of a better word, yes, punitive measure by the president, considering the fact that the minister is actually serving in his cabinet and, meddling with a state governor? Because we've had these, and I think this back and forth between his predecessor and, the embattled a former governor, so to
Governor.
speak. So do you think that the president should also call Wiki to order before the proclamation of the state of emergency?
That is actually what makes these issues very complex and dicey at the same time, because constitutionally, morally, and even ethically, is there supposed to be godfatherism in politics? The answer is a pure no. There should not be a godfatherism in politics. And even if there is, there should be more of, like, say, party mentors or something like that. But not when somebody comes openly and begins to undermine his successor. These things should not be, mark the word, should not be, and constitutionally. But in reality, we found out that that is the case. So I would not really blame and say that President Tinubu should have called Wike to order or also gave him some punitive measures. Okay, so what do we expect Tinubu to do to Wike now? Maybe deminister him and say you're no longer a minister because you contributed to the issue in River State. Mind you, Wike was smart in this case. Even though he came forth at times to speak on this matter, he can still withdraw himself and say, no, I don't have a hand in it. I don't have a hand in this issue. It is Fubara and the State House of Assembly members. But we know that he was working, they were working for him. He was working behind the scene. So actually, the president was, let's say, maybe in a fix. We wouldn't blame him. I wouldn't want to blame him to say that he didn't give Wike any punitive punishment. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. So what were we expecting?
Yeah, I'm actually bringing this up not because there are any signs that Wike had a hand in whatever happened in River State, but if you look at how that political front has been prior to the election and even after the election, and how things actually went south between the two, you would begin to have this imagination that, okay, maybe Wiki should have, stepped in, if at all he didn't have in it, should have stepped in. We all know that this is a constitutional matter, so to speak, but then one would have thought that serving in that particular cabinet, I'm talking about Mr. President, in a way, intervene, if at all, there hasn't been any bad blood between the two. So that is why I'm bringing this. And then another angle is that we seem to have forgotten about governance in the state. Because if you look at ever since came, just like I said, and then a lot of the developmental strides in the state were put on a hold, and then nobody seemed to be talking about that. Are you also concerned about the fact that governance have been relegated or even abandoned?
Hello, I didn't get you in the last few seconds. The network was. Could you please come again?
Okay, I said, are you concerned about how governance in Rivers State prior to this declaration of state of emergency was relegated or even abandoned? Like people didn't really feel the dividend of democracy.
Yes, yes, yes. It's something that calls for concern to any well-meaning person, any well-meaning Nigerian. Governance was it was almost brought to the state of Pius, let's use that word, in Rivers State. And even you muted the point that what if people had expected Wike, for example, to step in. But the problem cannot step into the problem because he was part of the problem. Let me use the word allegedly or purportedly. Was allegedly part of, he had an interest that contrasted or was in contradiction with that of the sitting governor. And your question is very important because this is not just, we must look beyond River State. We must look at the future. That is there a way to make sure that we handle such situations so that they do not arise in the future? Because it's River State today, tomorrow it may be Lagos, tomorrow it may be Anambra, it may be Imo, it could be Zamfara, it could be any other state. We must be able to look and see how governance in Nigeria can be built, how democratic institutions can be built. And shown what they call strongman politics of strong men who become almost stronger than the institution, because state institutions should be stronger than any person. As I look at the developed countries of the world, no matter how strong a man is, no matter how charismatic he is, look at Barack Obama, look at Trump. These people are people with charisma and people respect them a lot. Yet there are things they cannot do because the state institution is very strong. Even Trump, just this most recent example, has been given some orders which the judiciary has be able to stop. Just with the declaration of a judge sitting somewhere in one state, that shows you a place where the state institution is functioning properly. But in Nigeria, it's not the case. It's not the case because if certain institutions were functioning properly, let's even say that the legislature and the executive are failing and having one boot there. The judiciary should be seen to be above board. Not that this court in federal court here in Rivers State gives a judgment, another one in Abuja gives a contrasting judgment, a contradictory judgment on the same matter. It now poses a lot of questions. Does the judges, were they well trained? Do they not know what they are doing? Those are the kind of things we must begin to ask.
Yeah, and that particular part doubles down on what former President Jonathan was actually pointing out, talking about the weak judicial system we have and all. But then, for want of time, I would want you to, I want you to react to, the state of our democracy in all of these. Recently, we saw the All Progressive Congress in Osun State equally calling for a declaration of state of emergency in the state for what they describe as, some sort of is it mismanagement of governance or so? Governance not going well in Osun State, and then they are calling for a declaration of state of emergency, and that is quite worrisome because are we gradually getting to a situation or even a point where Mr. President can just wake up one morning and declare a state of emergency, so to speak, in a state where he probably does not feel that the governor should either govern or even a party in that particular state is not, part of his political party. Are we gradually getting to that point where we would be apprehensive of even, thinking that I might vote you to become my governor, but then I don't know if my vote will take you back or bring you out, because at the end of the day, the president has, all the rights to either allow you stay or not. So is that so concerning for our democracy?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're asking if we are gradually getting there. I would say we are not gradually getting there. We have been there for a long time in Nigeria. We have been there in our political situation and political realities. You see, the way the Nigerian democracy and governance is structured is such that, just as I pointed earlier, political leaders are not there for altruistic purposes. They are there for their selfish interests. They are not people who lead according to the dictates, with the people in mind, to make the state prosper. They just do things that, according to their whims and caprices, things that benefit them. The day it doesn't benefit them, they just use something else. So, for example, choose APC calling for a state of emergency in
Since we're having issues with network.
Oshun, because maybe they feel that is what is reigning now, and the president has done it in River State, in almighty River State, is being governed by a PDP governor. You said?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello?
We seem to be having
governor must
some sort
also
of
not
issues with
by
the
the
network.
ruling
But try to
APC
round up because
to just
we're running short of time.
move.
Yes.
Okay,
Are you there, Mr. Emmanuel? Yeah, just try to round off because we are running short of time. Yes.
Okay. Yes, so as I was saying, that governance in Nigeria has been quite poor. It has been quite poor. That is, we have gotten to a place where state institutions are the beck and call. It should not be so. Our leaders should know that they should build up democracy in such a way that whether it doesn't matter who is there, it doesn't matter whose act is God, that right processes must be obeyed at all times. No matter whether APC, PDP, or LP, NN, what we have in Nigeria. We have in Nigeria a case where anybody that is ruling, even a local government chairman, becomes the god of that chairman. And that Nigerian leader, political leader, must work well to make sure that everything gets better. I think that's how I'll close up for now.
Mr. Emmanuel, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me? I think I've rounded up.
Okay, everyone. We seem to be having some little network challenges. And
yes, same here. I'm struggling.
All right, I think this is a better place to call it a wrap because we can't hear from his end. Of course, I've been speaking with Mr. Emmanuel Okwalisa. I hope I got that name right. Mr. Emmanuel is a public affairs analyst, and he has been, speaking to us concerning the emergency rule in Rivers State, and some of the developing stories surrounding that particular situation in Rivers State. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to join us on another interesting edition of the show come Monday next week. My name is Pius Kadon, your host on the show Political Clinic. Ensure to like, comment, and share this video on your platform. Thank you for being part of the show. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.